Hello and welcome to Launerin's Gamer Score and welcome to Jurassic World Evolution. Revisiting the game again um, for a couple of reasons really. I've seen a lot of people talking about this game online and saying about how it's really hard and stuff like that, and how they're struggling. So I thought I'd just do a quick video to kind of help out, because I don't mean to sound too pleased with myself, but I've actually 100% completed this game. I didn't find it that difficult, but so I'm going to jump into the sandbox mode and just kind of potter about, and I'll just talk a little bit while I'm playing. So let's jump right in.
En route to feeder.
Okay, so
To the list.
obviously it won't be too obvious while playing in sandbox mode because I've got unlimited money, but essentially you have to be patient with the game, especially when you're playing the earlier missions. Your money's not going to be coming in very fast, and you need to kind of think about what you're doing in advance. And it's more just about waiting. I think when I was actually playing through the main story arc of it, I was literally sitting for about 20 minutes not doing anything, just waiting for my money to roll in. Other things you could do is just, rather than think about saving up and getting a lot of the dinosaurs in, which is going to cost a lot more, just kind of get a few of the cheaper ones like the Struthiomimus and the Gallimimus if you've unlocked it, and things like that, and then just focus on building your shops and things, and getting your facility rating up. But yeah, focus on getting your facility rating up, and then that'll bring in a little bit more money. It'll bring in more people to your park, and you'll find that you get money a little bit quicker. Now, while I'm actually talking about the facility rating, so you have, obviously on here you have an okay capacity, great satisfaction, great safety, and all of that. So in order to get better capacity, you build more hotels, and then with the hotels as well, that also increases your transport rating for some reason, whether that's because people don't have to travel to and from. If they want to come more than once, they can stay for a couple of days and things like that. Another thing to help get your ratings up is always make sure that you check your gift shops, and if they are busy, because they will start off with only one member of staff, well, one out of 5 staff. So make sure that you do increase that. It will increase the running cost, but as long as you kind of have enough guests coming in, and you set up your things right, then set up your expenses right, then you'll still get a profit from it quite easily. So that'll get the money rolling in a little bit quicker, and yeah. So another thing kind of to help reduce costs and things like that, and is in the earlier in the earlier missions, as soon as you do unlock the success rate upgrades for your creation labs, save up and get them on there, because it'd mean that you can customize your dinosaurs and still kind of get 100% genome on them with the increased rating, and then you'll have better dinosaurs in your park that people will want to come and see more. Yes, again, you'll have to sit and wait for your money to rack up in order to afford them, because they will be a little bit more expensive, but that's just something you've got to do. So another thing that I will talk about is, if you want to get the 100% completion on this game, you need to unlock all the locations. There we go. And everything in the archives, so the characters, diseases, and the memos, and find all the dig sites, get all of the miscellaneous objects from the dig sites as well, and then obviously unlock all the dinosaurs and the genes and things like that, and basically unlock everything. But in order to get all of the locations and all of the archive stuff, you have to get a 5-star rating on every island, and then for each division, so your entertainment, science, and security divisions, you need to get their reputation up to maximum on every island as well. So that's something you might want to consider if you're early on in the game playing through. Maybe not move on to the next island until you've done that, because I had to go back and do it all, and it was a little bit infuriating, if I'm honest. So as you can see, everything is unlocked. Everything's at 100% genome, even if it's not showing, because... oh no, there it is, yeah. Everything's at 100% genome, everything's unlocked. And there's the Indominus Rex, and from the second film, well, I say the second film, from the second Jurassic World film, the Indoraptor. So I was going to just pop a couple more of the Diplodocus in here while I've got a moment. Now, you will find, as you progress through the game, I'll just pop back in here a second, as you add more and more, as you modify the genome more and more, the viability goes down. It can go into the minuses. So even with those, the upgrades that I was talking about earlier, you still might not be guaranteed a dinosaur at the end of it. Okay, this is my... right. Yeah, you still might not be guaranteed the dinosaur at the end of it, but it's much more likely. I mean, at the moment I've got a 90% increase, so it's quite likely that I will get the dinosaurs out even at minus 15%. Right, so could build another enclosure down here, I think. How am I for power? 48, right, okay. Right, so that's a couple of tips on how to play. It's more about being patient more than anything, because, well, that's just what you've got to do, I'm afraid. So other things that you can do to increase your transport rating and things like that is build the monorails. They do get a little bit expensive, but it's worth it. And what I've found is essentially the more stations you can put in, the better. So I've literally got one there and one there, like really not far away from each other. There we go. As I was saying, incubation failed, so we'll just pop another one of them in. Right, so I think at the moment I'm going to start working on another enclosure. If I just pop that there. Yeah. Because I can spare no expense, I'm just using... Oh, hang on. Built that the wrong way round, haven't I? So, I suppose another tip that I could give is a lot of the larger dinosaurs like Spinosaurus and T-Rex and things like that, a lot of them don't like to have more than one of their own kind in the enclosure. Like for example with the Spinosaurus, it says in its profile that they are normally solitary. But what you need to make sure that you do is always go down to and have a look at their comfort requirements, and just have a look at how large their social group is. Because if you can have more than one of the larger dinosaurs in one enclosure, I mean because the rating for that is 661, so if you can have two of them in one enclosure, then it's going to rack your rating right up. Always remember that dinosaur variety is very important as well. My variety is a little bit lacking at the moment because I literally built this a little bit quickly and just concentrated on getting a 5-star rating on it. It's dropped down to 4.5 now, because it does change very quickly, which is why you've got every single shop you can buy there, and then literally seconds down the road the entire thing again, and hotels everywhere, and a monorail that doesn't go anywhere, and high profile dinosaurs in here and in here. So yeah, let's just there we go. Right, so another thing that I will say is it's not always necessary to have electric fences. Like with a lot of the earlier dinosaurs from the game, you'll find that their comfort threshold's quite low, or quite high, I guess. So they won't mind as much when there's storms, and they'll be harder to upset, and they'll be less likely to escape. I've run out of power. so they'll be less likely to escape, and so you can just use the smaller fences, which will save you a little bit of money in the budget. Can I fit that there? Can I fit another one there? Can I? Are you going to let me? Yes, I can. Brilliant. Right. There we go. So that'll make that fully powered. So I'll just... Yeah, always remember to keep an eye on your power as well. And manage your upgrades on your power stations well as well. Because by all means you could, on your power station, you could just put a load of the improved outputs on, but each time you put the improved output on, it introduces a 20% risk or less. So then you'll want the outage protection. If you can get your hands on the third one, pop that on, and then that'll mean that you can put the improved output 3 on twice, and then an improved output 1 on there as well, and then you can just pop a reduced upkeep on as well, and that'll keep your costs down. That'll keep your costs down and help you get some more money in if you're struggling to get money, so just save up a little bit for that. I mean, granted, everything I've just said there really only is for the larger power stations, because you can put 5 on, so that's what I do with that. So, amongst other things in the game, most importantly is to make sure that your dinosaurs are always well fed, which can get very expensive very quickly, seeing as just to resupply some of the feeders can cost over £100,000, well, dollars even, sorry. So when you are building your park, it is cheaper to resupply the just the standard herbivore feeders. So like these ones over here, they're cheaper to fill, to refill. So it's always best to start off with maybe just a couple of enclosures with herbivores in, and just focus on some of the smaller herbivores to start with, just to get your island rating up. So what you want to do is ideally, when you're first starting out, you want to think about, so when you're first starting out the game, your first kind of dinosaurs that you'll get will be like the Struthiomimus, and I believe the Triceratops is unlocked quite quickly early on as well. And things like the Edmontosaurus, that's quite an early one. And if you don't have a modified genome on it, they're not that expensive as compared to the other ones, but they do have a very low rating. But you can put a fair amount of, I think the Gallimimus, you can put about 10 of them in one enclosure, as with the Struthiomimus and things like that. Some of the ones that you need to be careful with, more than anything, it's unlocked a little bit later on in the game, but the Stegosaurus, for example, which apparently is really uncomfortable, but that's... The Stegosaurus doesn't like to have too large of a social group, so once you kind of have 5 of them, because that's how many they want in there, that's how many Stegosaurus you need in one enclosure, otherwise they'll get upset and things like that. Once you have them in there, there's not many other dinosaurs you could put in. You can only put another 10 in before they would start getting upset again. There are some dinosaurs that like even less than that. There we go. So there's the Tricera-tips, social group of 3 to 5, an ideal population of 9. So you have them, and that's why they're in with the Stegosaurus. So a couple of other tips. If you are putting multiple varieties of carnivores into a enclosure, try and make the enclosure big enough so that they don't keep stepping on each other, essentially. So, for example, I've got Velociraptors in here and Spinosaurus in here. Every now and again, the Spinosaurus and the Velociraptor will get close to each other and they'll have a little bit of an argument. They'll never fight, they'll never, well, not in my experience anyway, they won't fight or attack each other. It'll come up that they're fighting, but they don't actually ever fight. You need to make sure that you have enough of the feeders so that because if the Spinosaurus is feeding at one of them, the Velociraptors will become panicked and they won't want to go near that particular feeder, so they'll go to another one. But if the Velociraptors get too near the Spinosaurus, or any of the other large dinosaurs for that matter, the Spinosaurus gets a little bit rowdy and it might chase them a little bit, which will panic them more, and then they won't eat, and then their comfort will go down. And then they'll get angry, and then they'll start attacking fences and escape, and then you'll have to deal with that, which costs more money. And Velociraptors don't have a very good comfort threshold. As well, I think it's quite similar with most of the carnivores. Theirs is all usually quite high. So another thing that you want to try and do is put more than one of like a watering hole in. So it's important that your dinosaurs always have water, because again, otherwise they will get upset, panicked, they'll want to escape the enclosure and go and find water elsewhere. So if you have 2, same kind of thing. If the Spinosaurus is drinking at one, the Velociraptors won't want to go to that one, so they'll go to the other one. I've actually got 3 in here just as a kind of backup, just in case there's a Spinosaurus at one and a Spinosaurus at the other. And yeah, so same kind of thing applies to when you're doing herbivore enclosures. They will never fight. I've never seen two herbivores start fighting. But if you can keep, like for example with this one, I think I originally intended this to be my multiple dinosaur enclosure, so it was going to have a few different breeds in it. So it was going to have essentially all of the ground herbivore feeders are put over here, and a little watering hole in the corner, and then over this side of the same enclosure I was going to put some tall herbivore feeders. So I'd have the brachiosaurs, or the large dinosaurs, over one side of the enclosure and the smaller ones over on the other, so they wouldn't be stepping on each other too much. Because what I found is, if there's lots of the small dinosaurs in the way, the larger ones, they will struggle to get past, because obviously they need a lot of room to move. But in the end, what I just decided to do was put the Stegosaurus and the Tricera-tips over there, and then build another enclosure for the larger dinosaurs, and I might put a couple of smaller species in here as well. A nice large enclosure so they've got plenty of room to roam, and then dotted up the herbivore feeders all around the enclosure, so they would go and use the entire enclosure and just wouldn't hover around one area. So I think I've covered most of the bases. I've kind of tried to give as many tips as I can. That's another thing actually, before I do finish up this video. Always try and use the top-down view as much as possible. Especially before building enclosures, because there's been a couple of times where, maybe not so much on this map, but on some of the other islands, there seems to be like a large patch of land, and I've sat there and I've thought, oh, that'd make a lovely enclosure, that would, and then I've put a creation lab down costing, what was it, $400,000, and then it's been a little gap like that, and then the rest of it is unbuildable. Another thing that I've noticed as well is occasionally you will, I'll just build a fossil centre, you'll get the build cost obstructed come up. As opposed to it just being blue like that, and it might be in kind of a nice patch of forest that you've got near a path or something, but it's still coming up obstructed, so you'll come out of that and you'll go into the top down view and you'll be like, well, there's plenty of room there. What it might be is that you can't see it, like when you build in a forested area, it'll automatically get rid of the trees and just build whatever and take the cost into account. But if you try and build on top of water, it doesn't automatically get rid of it. So what's best is, if you are having trouble building something, is maybe just go to the water tool, especially if you've got plenty of money, to just kind of go up and down over the area that you're trying to build in. If there's no water there, it's not going to cost you much. If there's water there, then be prepared to pay a little bit of money to get rid of it. But it means that it'll open up that area to build on, and hopefully be a little bit less frustrating. So yeah, hopefully this video has been a little bit informative and helpful. If you have any questions or queries that you have about this game, feel free to pop them in the comments, and I can always make another video if I get enough of them, trying to answer as many of your questions as I can. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm an expert on this game, but I have enjoyed playing it, and I've noticed that, like I said at the start of the video, I've noticed a lot of people saying that it's hard, and quite frankly, I just want to make a few videos just to try and help anybody that's struggling, because it's a really enjoyable game, especially when you've got everything unlocked and you can come into the sandbox mode and just play around. One thing that I did notice somebody say is that they were surprised that they unlocked the sandbox mode as early as they did in the game, because it is literally, I think you do one of the first missions on the very first island unlocks the sandbox mode. But fact of the matter is, the sandbox mode's more here for you to just try things out, put some dinosaurs in with others and learn the thresholds. I'm not saying that you need to have a notebook with you, just kind of get a couple of favourites in mind. Like, for example, if we just pop over here a second, what I found, and this is the last tip, and then I'll actually close up the video, is, so you have the like the armoured dinosaurs. Like the Triceratops, and then some of the lesser known ones, the Torosaurus, I'm not going to try Sinoceratops, and there's another one somewhere. There we go, the Chasmosaurus or Chasmosaurus. So them, not including the Pentaceratops, unfortunately, it doesn't work. There's just too many. Most of them will require 2 of their own kind in an enclosure to be happy. Apart from the Triceratops, which I believe is happy if there's only 1. But what I'm about to explain, you can have 2. So if you have 2 of each of them, and then the Chasmosaurus up the top, if you need 3 of them to be comfortable. If you have 2 of each and then 3 of those all in one enclosure, it's their maximum population limit for, I think it's, I can't remember which one it is, because there's one of them slightly lower, and they're all happy and they're all comfortable. I will say that some of those breeds you do unlock a little bit later in the game, so you won't be able to do it straight away. But if you do that, you will end up with 1 enclosure, and it doesn't have to be a huge enclosure, I've found, but you'll have 1 enclosure that can house 5 different species of dinosaurs. Granted, the rating of them isn't that great. I mean, the Triceratops goes down to 68. Again, these are all modified genomes, so they might be a little bit less if you're earlier on in the game. But you'll have all of these dinosaurs all in 1 enclosure, not taking up very much room. It'll rack up your dinosaur rating, it'll rack up your variety rating, and as long as you keep them all happy, it'll keep your dinosaur rating up as well. So that is really it now for this week's video. Like I said at the start, if you do have any questions that you'd like me to try and answer, please just pop them into the comments below, and I will do my best to try and assist anybody that's struggling, because that is what I am trying to do. So thank you very much for watching. Please like, share and subscribe if you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, or
Setting additional task.
even if you just want to, maybe. And I will see you next time.
Adding to the list. Adding task. Confirmed. Resupply request acknowledged.